knows where I want to be. I want to be where you are, basically.
What?
I've been sat here all night. I really want to be there.
Look, buddy, you stay where you are.
When automatic doors don't sense me and I have to do a little jig outside. And I think, you know, in our everyday lives, we'd all like a little bit of magic to exist, wouldn't we?
Warwick Davis.
Yes.
How the devil are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I never thought I'd see myself sat here.
Right, how do you feel about opening up your life like this?
Pretty good at the moment. Ask me again at the end of the show.
You've acted on film and television and appeared in two of the biggest movie franchises in history, Harry Potter and Star Wars. We calculated that your appearances in all those films have been watched by over 1 billion people. Wow. So nearly as many as tonight's show. That means a staggering 1 out of 7 people in the world has watched you in a movie. How do you feel about that?
That's an amazing statistic. I mean, yeah. I mean, I do what I do as a performer to entertain people. So it's lovely that my films have that much reach around the globe.
Would you like being a star, Warwick? I mean, do you sometimes catch yourself in the mirror and go, yeah?
Every morning. I enjoy my life and being an entertainer. Whether I enjoy being a star, I enjoy performing. That's it. I enjoy performing.
I'm told that you do pull quite a few cunning stunts when it comes to exploiting your celebrity status, particularly when it comes to getting upgrades at airlines.
Well, I have a little technique that I use.
Would you like to share with the group?
Well, I won't be able to use it ever again now. What I do is, you know, when you're checking in at the check-in desk, I'm, of course, stood on the luggage trolley at this point to be able to read. And I'm fumbling for my passport. This is acting fumbling that I do. And then out slips a few conveniently placed photographs of characters that I've played in films.
This is when you're paying for yourself.
Oh, this is when I'm paying,
And
yes.
You say you've been quite tight this
time. I don't believe in paying
You're in economy.
Oh, absolutely,
So you bought the cheapest economy ticket, and what you're trying to do is use your fame to get yourself bounced into a better class of seat.
Piers, it's not like I need the legroom, is it, right? So, economy's fine, right?
There is a practical need for you to get upgraded. What is that in terms of just literally how you sit on a plane seat?
Well, you know, being in economy is a challenge because the gaps between the seats are tiny. And usually that gap is taken up by you standing up and sort of moving away through the row. But for me, it's my whole body's in that tiny space, and it is really hard to squeeze in and out of the seats. Often what I do, especially if you're, you know, if you're in the sort of 5 across area on a plane, I have to actually stand up and walk across the armrests. And I had some very horrified looks when people are asleep and they wake up and I'm sort of straddling them across the armrests. They don't know what's hit them at that point. But I've tried all sorts. I tried actually getting an upgrade while I was on the plane, because that's another technique you can use. And it was the time when films were only shown sort of in the middle of the plane. You didn't have a personal screen. Yeah, so I said to my wife, Sam, I said, yeah, I'm going to get us an upgrade. I've got a plan here. Because the film was just starting, you see, and I couldn't see it. I was like, oh, I'm going to be bored. So I said, excuse me, I know you've got some empty seats up there, but I'm having trouble seeing the film, you know, and I really wanted to watch this film. I'm in it. And she said, OK, I'll go and see what I can do. I said, all right, Sam, just pack the bags, we're going to move up. She came back with a metal flight case and said, sit on that. So then I had to sit on it because I, of course, said I wanted to watch the film, and it was very uncomfortable. We
couldn't do an interview with you without talking about your height. How tall are you?
I'm 3'6".
And what is the condition that you have?
I have spondyloepiphyseal dysplasia congenita, shortened to SED. The ends of the bones are not formed correctly, and as a result of that, I'm short.
It's a form of dwarfism.
Absolutely,
Which is the all-encompassing phrase for all little people, which I think is the way all people who are little like to be described now.
Yeah.
How do you feel about your height? Has it ever really bothered you?
Well, it's who I am. My height has dictated who, as a person, I have become. It's all in here, you see. You're as tall as you feel, you know, and...
Many people, I'm sure, don't quite know the right way to talk about this or to deal with it or to talk to you about this.
But people do tend to try and avoid the subject. You know, we're also worried in this sort of age of political correctness of not saying the wrong thing, and I think what that's doing, that's stifling conversation and communication. For me, I want people to come out and say it, you know. And I do notice people get a form of Tourette's almost when they talk to me, because they start using the word short, the word small, little, dwarf, in normal conversation without meaning to, because they try not to say it. And the more they try not to, the more they say it. I had a guy come round to measure up for the patio, and I said, oh, I want a little wall around the edge. And he said, oh, you mean a dwarf? You mean just a few bricks high? I said, yeah, I want one of them, because it is called a dwarf wall, but he was trying to avoid saying it.
What are the taboo phrases? I think midget is now...
is very unacceptable.
That is deemed offensive.
Absolutely.
Little people is a good phrase.
Little people is one that I personally like. I know that doesn't suit everybody. A person with dwarfism, restricted growth is another phrase that's used.
What are the other practical issues that you most encounter? I mean, for example, when you go to a supermarket, I just imagine there are shelves, and some of them you can't reach. What would you do in that situation?
Well, for many years, my diet consisted of only things on the lower three shelves. It's called the shelf diet. You have to be kind of very resourceful as a little person.
What do you do with a big trolley if the stuff goes down the bottom and you can't
That's
get
a nightmare.
It? Right.
Those deep trolleys, it's in there for good. And when I get to the checkout, I unload half the stuff, and then I'm like, well, I can't get the rest out. And then you know, there's that flap at the end that allows them to kind of go together. You could flap that up and reach in. It's like crawling into a giant mouse trap, though. If that door comes down, you're in the trolley for good.
I've heard that there are people from some parts of the world who literally just want to touch you.
Yes, in some cultures, the little people are lucky.
Ireland and Japan being two.
Yes, in Japan, I can't figure that one out, but when I was there, there was a lot of touching going on. A lot of touching. And recently I got into a lift, and I'd walked past somebody. I thought, she's having a look. She wants to have a touch. And she got in the lift with me. Oh, now I'm trapped. And she got a fair old share of luck that day. She had more than a helping. She probably won the lottery after that.
Would you find it a constant frustration and irritation, or is it just something you have always had to deal with and that's what it is?
You know what? I don't think I've ever been frustrated about being short. You know, it's something you deal with, and I actually get great amusement from it most of the time, because I kind of see it for what it is. You know, it's like, oh, well, it doesn't work out. You know, when automatic doors don't sense me and I have to do a little jig outside. And I watch the people inside not knowing where to look. They're like, oh, do we go help him? I don't know what to do. And so those occasions, I know it happens, and I think it's quite fun.
When you were born, your parents didn't know that you were going to emerge with this condition. It must have been an incredibly harrowing time for your parents.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how they would have coped, you know, just to have that uncertainty about your child. You know, is he going to survive? You know, what is this illness? What does this mean for his future? But they stood strong, and again, that's the reason I am who I am today, because they filled my world with such positivity and such hope and such optimism, I suppose.
Your mother told us that being short of stature had made you a better person. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree with that, yeah. My physicality has dictated who I am and how I see the world. And I don't just mean from, you know, a lower perspective. I mean how I use empathy and how I see other people.
Kids can be at school when they're very young. They can be either very kind or very cruel. What was your experience?
I had a great school life. You know, my overriding memory of school is a very positive one. I had good friends, good teachers that didn't treat me any differently. You know, I was always chosen last when they're choosing teams. You know the feeling, I'm sure. And then, you know, having to do something like the long jump, you know, still having to get involved. I couldn't even get to the sandpit. You know, having to do the high jump, again, couldn't even get on the mat. You know, it was like...
Football? You only
football, a nightmare. People would think I was the ball. I did score once, though. The ball hit me. I was standing there minding my own business, thinking I'm never going to see any action in this game. The ball hit me, bounced off and went in the goal.
I hope you pretended it was deliberate.
I did. I was like, yes, and I was celebrated as man of the match. We won.
Run me through how you landed this amazing role as an Ewok in the Star Wars film Return of the Jedi, because that, I guess, propelled you into the world that you craved at the time, which was acting and movies and so on.
Yeah, when I was 11, my grandmother, she heard a radio commercial, and it was Lucasfilm that created this announcement saying, look, we're looking for short people to be in our new Star Wars movie, Return of the Jedi. My mum phoned the studio, and they said, we've got everyone we need. We had loads of calls, we're fine. And I think Mum offered them cash.
And when you were on set, you know, with Luke Skywalker and the others, I mean, this must have been an extraordinary feeling for you.
It was an amazing experience, you know, meeting my heroes face to face at the age of 11 was indescribable.
You've hung out with some ridiculously famous people. Harrison Ford, Liam Neeson, Dame Maggie Smith and others. Do you ever get starstruck yourself? I mean, do actors get starstruck around these people?
Yeah, you do. I met Michael Jackson many years ago when I was working on one of the Ewok adventure movies. I was out in Northern California working at George Lucas's special effects facility, and he just popped into our studio to say hi, and for me, it was...
Rewind. We have a picture of this.
There we are.
Michael Jackson pops in to say hi to Warwick Davis. He was the biggest star possibly ever.
Oh, it was huge at that time, and this would have been about 1984, 85. The fortunate thing is about this photo, there was one that I found where I still had the Ewok head on. It could have been anyone.
I want to show you another picture. This is from one of your films, Leprechaun. And you starred alongside a young, up-and-coming actress. You're clutching her feet.
Yes.
In what I can describe as a rather leering manner, Warwick Davis.
He's the one that's leering, not Warwick Davis.
But when we find out who this is, we could forgive a bit of leering, because...
It's Jennifer Aniston.
It is Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah.
In one of her first films.
Absolutely, yeah. And I like to think that this is the film that gave her big break.
She doesn't talk a lot about Leprechaun, I've noticed.
No, she tends to deny Leprechaun.
Yeah. Were you in Leprechaun? I don't know what you're talking about.
I mean, you should never deny your past. I mean, that was the one that started it all, Leprechaun.
So you landed the lead role in the film Willow, another George Lucas film. George Lucas gave you some great advice just before that came out, I think, about fame.
Yes, he did. He did, and it's something that has stuck with me. He said, when Willow comes out, you know, things are going to change for you, you'll be recognised, but always remember who you are, stay true to that person, and don't believe the hype. Really important advice.
Three bits of advice that most stars, in my experience, forget.
Yes, yeah.
What was Val Kilmer like to work with?
He's fantastic. I mean, without Val, I probably wouldn't have got through that film. He was very physically challenging, very mentally challenging, but Val never let me take it too seriously.
You got a dinner invitation with Val in Covent Garden, and some other famous friends, I think, turned up. Who else was there that night?
Well, Val invited me for dinner. We were filming, and he said, come to dinner tonight. I said, oh, I'm tired after filming. He said, no, come out. We're going to a lovely restaurant in Covent Garden. Somebody's there, the mate of mine's going to come down. So I quickly phoned my mum, said, can you give me a lift to Covent Garden after filming today? And she had one of these Citroen 2CVs, right? Yes. But this one was orange and white. OK. It was a beautiful car, you know, when you weren't in it. And I said, can you give me a lift to the restaurant? So she gave me a lift there, and I said, look, come back in a couple of hours and pick me up if you wouldn't mind. So I went into the restaurant. It's only Tom Cruise sat there with Val Kilmer and his wife, Mimi Rogers, at the time. He said, do you want a booster seat? And I said, yeah. And he said, you can have mine. We sat down. And we were eye to eye. We sat down and we had a lovely meal. It was really, really nice. And I'm keeping an eye on the clock, you see, and thinking, oh, no, Mum's going to pull up outside here in a minute. And there's some sort of orange and white embarrassment. And so I kind of made my excuses and left and sort of ran around the corner so I could sort of head her off before she got up the road where the restaurant was. But, yeah, amazing. What an amazing experience. He was a huge star.
I heard you actually got into your mother's car and screamed, go, go, go.
Oh, yeah, it was to get out in case they come out following us, you know. I mean, there can't be anything worse for any new parents than what you had to go through with Lloyd, to lose a son, any child, after a few days. What do you remember of that time? You know, it kind of becomes a blur. I think sort of protective mechanisms kick in, and it's very hard to take in all of the emotion and everything that's happening. You know, doctors are telling you one thing, you don't want to believe what they're saying. But it just comes down to the fact in the end that you know, life kind of has to take its course. When you look at pictures of Lloyd, aged just a few days, beautiful little baby, what do you feel when you look at them? Immense pride. You know, our son was somebody. He was on this earth for 9 days and brought a lot of happiness to people, you know, a lot of anguish, especially to me and Sam. Did you realise the kind of genetic lottery that you were playing with? We didn't understand what potentially could happen if we were to have a child. You know, we had no understanding of that. And the thing is about, you know, the kind of genetic lottery is that it resets every time, you know. So if you have a child that inherits both genes and doesn't survive, the next time you go for a child, it's the same odds again, 1 in 4 chance. When you lost George as well, obviously another hammer blow, but it didn't put you off again. And you had 2 more children, Annabelle and Harrison. Yeah, we were obviously very relieved. But, I mean, the early days for Annabelle and Harrison were not without their worrying times. You know, they were both on the ventilator for some time because their lungs didn't have the capacity when they were born to fully support them. So then you start thinking, oh, this is Lloyd all over again. But fortunately, miraculously, they were nursed to full health and now live very active, full lives and do our heads in. they're both here. Yes. Someone in the audience, I think. Hello. Is he a good dad? Yeah. You don't want to swap him? They both have your condition, SED. Obviously, you're the perfect person, I guess, to advise and help them. Do you have any fears or concerns for them as they get older? Yeah, well, I mean, I think it is easier for when the entire family, you know, have a condition. You know, we all have dwarfism. You know, it's easier for them to accept who they are because their peers are also, you know, short. We've experienced life and, you know, hopefully can guide Annabelle and Harrison in the best possible way. And then at the same time, though, let them become their own people and make their own mark on the world. Both your kids appeared in the final Harry Potter film. How did that come about? Well, it helped that their father was, you know, in the film. And I think I dropped a few hints saying it'd be great to get Annabelle and Harrison in the film. But you must have been the greatest dad ever for doing that, eh? Well, you know... Was he? I mean, he got you in the Harry Potter film. For them, though, it's quite normal, I think, for them now, you know, because Harrison was born in 2003 and I'd already done, I think, 1 or 2 Harry Potter films by then. So he's grown up. Is Harrison named after Harrison Ford? He was named after a boy at my daughter's school called Harrison. Oh. And also at the same time, I was thinking, yeah, it's a great actor's name. Harrison Davis. But Harrison doesn't want to be an actor now. No? He wants to be a traffic cop. Really? What a waste of a good name.
It did break a lot of boundaries, Life's Too Short, and it was excruciatingly funny, but occasionally just excruciating, which obviously is, I guess, the reality of what your life has been like from time to time.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. These are things that I spoke to Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant, who wrote and directed the series, and I would tell them these little anecdotes, and then they started writing scenes that hadn't happened, but I wondered why they hadn't, because they were so real. They'd managed to get into my headspace and the headspace of somebody who was short. You know, Warwick in that series, he was so determined to do well, and every time it was going OK, something happened. Very much Laurel and Hardy-esque, or Frank Spencer. The slapstick elements come into it, but that idea of, you know, the success, you know, within your grasp, and something comes along at the last minute to...
Well, you talk about success, but the moment you take a call from Ricky Gervais, before mobile phones, you'd have to go to a regular phone box where you may not be able to reach the phone. I mean, it's humorous, but for you, it's awful.
It is, but I had a solution, you see, and I would actually put my feet up the sides. You know, there's those little panes. I could straddle it, and we actually used that in the Life's Too Short special. There is a shot of me in a phone box doing that. And it's funny, you know, I told Ricky the story some years before, and then he showed me the script. He said, we've done, you know, the phone box thing you do. And I said, oh, God, I haven't done that for, like, 20 years. I was a kid. So then I'm having to put my money where my mouth is and do this. I couldn't walk the next day, seriously.
There's a physical reality to your condition, is that you're in pain almost all the time, and always have been.
I do experience quite a lot of pain in walking, you know, and any kind of physical exertion, the next day I'll pay for it, you know, and you know, my elbow joints, my knee joints, hip joints. But I've got a pretty high pain threshold, and I don't take painkillers. I kind of don't. I don't want to. Just kind of deal with it. Again, it becomes part of you and part of the determination to kind of conquer it and keep going through. And I think that it sort of boosts your character, I suppose.
And what about situations like when you try to apply for car insurance?
That's right. Yeah, these online forms that you know, people on the phone have to fill in. My statistics completely mess that up. You know, my height,
exist, right?
My height, my age, my weight doesn't work. You know, the computer says no. It just can't do it. It can't do it. And he's like, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, I can't help it. This is who I am. You need to update your system there.
Have you been instrumental in changing quite a lot of that, simply because of your very high-profile status?
I'd like to think so. I don't know. I mean, the world is a very diverse place, and we need to make sure that, you know, in all areas of life, you know, society can cope with that diversity. You know, people are more educated than they used to be, and you know, I hope that the fact that I'm on television makes dwarfism more the norm. And so it doesn't become something that we have to point and stare and laugh at anymore. And I feel like progress is happening, very slowly, but I feel like we're getting somewhere.
Let's talk about Harry Potter. How keen were you to get into the Harry Potter business?
I was very keen. I mean, the first book was a huge, you know, bestseller. And I think I remember thinking, if this was ever to become a film, I would love to be in it, because there were gnomes, there were all sorts of characters that I could play. I badgered my agents to get me a meeting. I want to go in. And I do remember the audition. I went in and we just played the scene out, the scene in the charms class that you see in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. And we just had a blast. Lots of laughter, lots of fun. I went out with a good feeling. But then it was about 3 weeks I had to wait. And then my agent phoned and said, you got the part. And he said, wait there a minute, though, because not only do they want to cast you as Professor Flitwick, they'd also like you to play the Goblin Bank Teller. So I won 2 parts in the same film.
What was it like working with Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint and Emma Watson? Because you would have seen them go from complete unknowns, really.
Well, when we started working on the very first film, I think I was taller than Daniel. But by the end of it, you know, he was a young adult and, you know, shot up in height and in fame. But, I mean, I think they just dealt with it amazingly. I mean, I'd sort of gone through that transition of being child actor into adult actor, but not in the spotlight that they had thrust upon them.
Why do you think Harry Potter captured the imagination so much?
It's one of those things, I think there's so many interesting characters, and it also creates a world that doesn't exist but feels like it possibly could exist. And I think that's what's exciting for people as an audience. You know, we all like to believe that magical things can happen, and if you push on that wall, there's a world beyond it. And I think, you know, in our everyday lives, we'd all like a little bit of magic to exist, wouldn't we?
You're Warwick Davis, bona fide movie star, TV star, presenter. That's why you're hired. It's no longer got anything to do with your height.
You know, that's a lovely sentiment, a lovely thing to think about. But I fully acknowledge the fact that I'm short is the reason that I'm sitting here talking to you now. You know, it's the reason I got my very first role. But it is lovely to, at the same time, be regarded and given the opportunity to do so many diverse things, hosting game shows, presenting TV shows, that do not have anything to do with the fact that I'm short.
The charity you set up with Sam, Little People UK, what would you say the primary purpose is?
Well, it's really to support people with dwarfism and their families, because we acknowledge at the same time it's sometimes not about just the person with the condition. Their families can sometimes have very, very hard time coping and understanding and dealing with it, especially if they're average height. But at the same time, helping the medical profession to pool their resources.
I wonder if any of the doctors who referred to you as it are watching tonight.
I wonder.
It would be quite a sobering discovery that the child they called it is now Warwick Davis, one of the biggest stars in the country.
They were acting in a way that they did at that point. You know, you've got to remember it was 1970, so there was even less understanding than there is perhaps even now. We still have a lot to learn.
Do you have a dream role that you still hanker after?
The chat show's where I want to be. I want to be where you are, basically.
What?
I've been sat here all night. I really want to be there.
Look, buddy, you stay where you are. You'd be too popular.
But I wouldn't be able to carry it off in quite the same way that you do, of course.
Thank you,
Piers.
Warwick. A bit too late for that. You can write your own tombstone inscription.
Oof.
How would you like to be remembered?
I think it is actor who just happened to be short. And that's quite cool. I like that analogy.
Well, Warwick Davis, it's been a great pleasure.
Thank you
very much.